Hi, everyone. My name is Amy Jepson, and I'm the Behavioral Health Director for Crossroads of Western Iowa. And we're super excited to present this series called Project Hope. And the idea behind this, we wrote for a grant, and we were given the grant to be able to bring these series of sort of help workshops or mental health sessions to really help people that are struggling, or help any of us that are sort of struggling through COVID and all the crazy things that we have to deal with right now. We're extremely lucky that Penny Zenker has agreed to speak to us tonight and be with us. And I just want to tell you a little bit about her. Before I do that, though, I just want to kind of cover, if you haven't muted yourself, if you wouldn't mind muting yourself. Last week was our first set of these 3 workshops. So Tuesday nights are first responders, Wednesday nights are essential workers, and Thursday nights are for teens. But anyone can join any of those that would like. And so just kind of a reminder, if you wouldn't mind muting yourself if you're not speaking, and then please feel free to use the chat. We found it really helpful when people are putting comments or thoughts in the chat. It really helps the presentation. This is really your time, and it's kind of a small group. We hope some more people will join us tonight, but it's pretty much a small group, so you're getting your almost one-to-one time here with Penny. So let me tell you a little bit about her, and then we'll turn the time over to her. So Penny is an international speaker and business strategy coach and best-selling author. She founded, developed, and sold her first multi-million-dollar business while living in Zurich, Switzerland. Later, at the world's largest marketing research company, she managed business unit turnarounds and was a Tony Robbins business coach helping entrepreneurs. Penny has is high energy and interactive in her keynote presentations and workshops. And she really likes to inspire people and help you change and think more strategically, to be more emotionally intelligent and to inspire personal leadership. Penny's expertise focuses on strategic thinking, leadership, problem solving, communication, and productivity. She has coached hundreds of successful business leaders and entrepreneurs in leadership roles, relationship, and building culture. And like I said, we are extremely lucky that she was willing to come in and do these. She's doing 2 of these workshops for us. And so without further ado, I will turn the time over to Penny, and we're super excited in hearing what you have to say tonight.
Thank you, Amy. I appreciate it. And I wish I could see you guys and you could give me the Zoom hands so I could see, or dance hands or whatever they call it, right? That's the clapping on Zoom. So if you feel like it, I do have a screen here for all of your pictures if they were to show up. So if you feel like showing your face, that would be awesome. I would love to see it because it helps to build energy for me and see that you're getting it and you're following along. And it also keeps you from multitasking. You do not want to be multitasking right now. So we want to have your full attention. So if you want to bring those on, I would love to have you bring up your screen and definitely be sharing in the chat. So today we're going to talk about the energy of thought. It's actually the topic that I did at TEDx about 3 years ago. So I'd also encourage that you go and check that out because there's going to be a lot of it's not the same, but there's going to be some overlapping principles that you could really benefit from watching that as well. So we're talking about effectively building resilience and managing stress. And super excited for all that Project Hope is doing here. So I want to also thank Amy and her team and Project Hope and Crossroads of Western Iowa and all the different partners who are part of this because they went out of their way to make sure that they could create an amazing program for you. So this is in service to you. And in that, before we get started, I really wanted to thank you for Natalie for letting us know. So definitely jump on when you can. And thanks for using the chat. So I wanted to bring up this sign to tell you from your community. I want to, from the bottom of my heart, to thank you for the service that you provide. I found this sign because as I walk through the neighborhoods, I'm deeply moved by the different signs that I see in people's yards, really thanking our heroes, because before the pandemic, it wasn't something that you would see. But there's so much love and profound gratitude that has gone into these signs, and they're everywhere because you are our everyday heroes. And I say that it's not just during the pandemic that this is the case, but especially during the pandemic that you're being recognized. So I really want to thank you on behalf of the community because every day you show up with service and devotion. And I honor that. And, and I know that you're givers, and I know that you give and you give and you give all day long. And then you go home and you give some more. And you're probably like, yeah, that's the truth. But the truth is also, it can take its toll on you after a while on your physical and mental well being. So you've got to be exhausted, right? You've got to be overwhelmed. You've got to be frustrated at times, and maybe even fearful, and a multitude of other emotions that come up for you, because as I think you are human, right? So although I can't fully understand the stresses that you have on the front line, I want you to know that what I'm going to be sharing with you today is universal. These are, we get to understand that strategies, emotional strategies, are cross contextual. So any type of emotional intelligence is going to be able to be applied in many different areas. So this is, even though I don't have the same background that you have, I know that these strategies work. I've seen them, they've worked for me, and they've worked for hundreds of people that I've coached around the world. So one of the things that I wanted to do was I wanted to start by sharing with you, I wrote this book, The Productivity Zone, Stop the Tug of War with Time. And I started to, as I've been doing a lot of programming around stress management and resilience, I started to think more deeply about this idea and this statement, this condition of the tug of war, right? The tug of war with time, that statement. And what I'd like to do with that is dig a little deeper with you. And it reminds me of a funny story when I think about going a little deeper, because I started to date my boyfriend, and I remember distinctly we were kind of at the point where we had been on about 5 or 6 dates, and it was like, was this going to move into something more deep or not? And I said to him, well, across the table, I said, listen, I need to be able to share intimate thoughts and be able to share, in depth with you. And he kind of, you could see the Adam's apple as he gulped real hard, and he looked at me, a little bit nervously, and said, well, how deep? And I said, shark deep. So we're going to go shark deep for a moment. So bear with me. So when I Googled tug of war, what I found is that, because we don't just have a tug of war with time, we have a tug of war with money, we have a tug of war with our health, we have a tug of war with relationships, and we even have a tug of war with our values and principles sometimes. So what is this tug of war? So when I looked it up, it didn't surprise me that what it said was that it's the struggle for control. That's interesting, because that explains why tug of war represents a stressful resistance, a situation of that nature. And it's really learned helplessness. And what I want to do is explain a little bit about what I mean by learned helplessness. It's because we've exhausted ourselves in focusing on the things that we can't control. So we are so focused and concerned and worried and giving so much attention to the things that are outside of our control that it's exhausted us. And then what's happened is it's weakened us and made us sort of seemingly powerless to the things that we can control. So I want you to keep that in mind. And I want us to be thinking about, well, how does that relate to resilience when we talk about stress management and resilience? So let's find out. And as I said, I want to be a little interactive here. So I'd like to know, where are you on your resilience journey? I'm gonna pop up a little poll here, which is going to require you to take a look on your screen and choose one of these. What's your current level of resilience? Where are you today in your ability to be resilient? And then we'll talk about, what does that mean, being resilient? So we're all talking about the same thing. But let's assume for right now that we're all talking about the same thing. And I would imagine that you guys are pretty good at it, which I'm seeing from the numbers, but it's not easy. So I'll give you another couple seconds to put that up. And by the way, thank you for putting those up there. And I'm going to engage you in the chat in a minute. So stay at your computer. So give another couple seconds here. And all right, I'm ending the poll. We got almost everybody. So let's share those results. So what we find is is that people are pretty average, right? With where they feel like they are in their resilience journey. And a decent percentage under 5 really struggling, right? And then there's a certain percentage, which is pretty good, almost 40%, that are at 7 to 8. So wherever you are today, that's great. What we want you to walk away with today is some tips and tricks and strategies that are going to help you to be more resilient, that are going to help you help your coworkers to be more resilient, right? And we're going to do that through understanding how you can control and direct the energy of your thought to do that. So what I'd like you to do is now pop into the chat and finish this sentence. Resilience is. What is resilience? What is it? I had to look that up too, right? Because I wanted to make sure I was, what is it? What does it say in the dictionary? What do you think it is? When you rated yourself, what does that mean that it is to you? Go ahead and pop that in the chat. It's being able to bounce back. It's riding the waves and recovering from difficulties. It's the ability to cope and bounce back without too much self-destruction. I like that one. The ability to bounce back when you experience a setback, surviving, the ability to bounce back from a crisis, stressful situation, overcoming obstacles, maintaining a positive attitude. Thank you guys for sharing. The ability to cope and function at a level needed, how you keep moving forward, right? Those are all great definitions and they're all right. But what's interesting is that there's one thing that's missing, or at least I didn't see it online. I didn't see it anywhere, but it's really the key to resilience. And it's the key to our control issue. And that's why I want to bring those two together. Do you guys want to know what it is? Give me a yes. Since I can't see you and can't have you put your hands up, give me a yes in the chat and say you want to hear it. Yes. Awesome. All right. Yes. All right. Thank you. Good. That's what I like. That gives me energy, right? When you guys are participating like that. So the answer is, it's letting go. Is that we need to be able to let go in order to create resilience. So if we want to shift our focus, then we have to, like if I'm focused on in this direction and I want to focus here, I have to release and let go of this focus so that I can focus on something else. If I want to lose weight, then I'm going to need to change my eating habits. If I want to move on to another relationship, I'm going to have to let go of the current relationship that I'm in. You get where I'm going. And that's the hard part. That's the hard part, is the letting go. I think that's where people have the biggest challenge. That's why we retain stress. That's why we try to control, is because we're not good at letting go. Can you guys relate to that? I've been having these deep thoughts and you're here with me and we're going shark deep. What do you think? Oh yeah, right? It's a challenge. So that's one of the things that we have to keep in mind, is how we let go. Now, I want to say that we are resiliency machines, right? I mean, the human body is incredible. I mean, we produce antibodies that fight off disease, right? We regenerate tissue and regenerate cells. I mean, it's incredible. Every pint of blood that we give, our body will create 3.5 trillion red blood cells like that. That's insane. So the body is built to eliminate waste, right? We have an entire waste elimination system. So why is it so difficult? Because our physical body is built for that. So I think this picture represents how we get trapped and it's in our mind. Is these ladies are watching a scary movie. They're sitting on their sofa and they're safe, mind you. Hi, Natalie. I'm seeing some pictures. Thank you for showing your face. So they're sitting there and they're watching a movie. It's the environment has brought them in, right? They're listening to that music that sets the scene and they're following the characters, ba-boom, ba-boom, right? And you can see that, like, you see it on somebody's face, and probably if you're there, you feel it in your heart and your heart's beating faster, or maybe you stop breathing a little bit, or maybe you have goosebumps on your arms, right? Our body is reacting to us telling our mind that we're scared, but it's a paper tiger because there's no real threat. So we do that all the time, is we tell ourselves things that aren't true, and it impacts our body, and it impacts our feelings, and it impacts our actions, and it impacts our results. So I like this picture. I thought it was a good representation because we can all appreciate that, right? And we've got science that's proven this as well in terms of the placebo effect. We know that there's a million different studies out there, or maybe that's over exaggeration, but there are thousands of studies around placebo that tell us that this little sugar pill has the same impact, the same biological impact as the actual medicine, because people believe it will work. And I actually talked on my TEDx, I had to research this for that. And there's actually a thing called the nocebo effect, which is how our negative thoughts impact us and our biology. And actually Bruce Lipton, who is a cell researcher, he a cellular scientist and researcher, he actually wrote a groundbreaking book, and it was called the belief, the biology of belief. And so it is the fact that our thoughts impact our biology and vice versa, right? So that's where the hard part comes in, is getting control of that emotional reaction that can happen, because our body and mind affect and infect each other. So when we come upon stressful situations, we've got two potential responses. One is the fight or flight response, which is that reactive emotional response to flee, right? Or fight, flight, or freeze. And the other one is a challenge response. And we could show up at different types of stressful situations in either of these, right? And it may depend on the situation. But if I asked you, for the most part, which one are you? Do you show up in the fight or flight, more emotionally reactive side when it, now, let's say, as you've been under extreme pressure for more than 8 months? Maybe you were different before the pandemic. Maybe it wore down on you. Where are you now? Go ahead and pop into the chat. Are you reactive or proactive? Are you fight or flight, or are you challenge? So thanks, Maureen. She said fight or flight, right? And it's good to recognize it. It doesn't matter which one it is. This presentation is really to help you get a heightened awareness of where you are. So some people say reactive, feeling burned out. Totally get it. Drifted into reactive, depends on the situation, right? Because it does depend on the situation a little, because it's what's at stake. Maybe before the pandemic, there wasn't as much at stake for you personally or for those around you in your community. So maybe that type of stress allowed you to still go into challenge response. But as it gets closer to home, and maybe you've been impacted, or you're worried about getting the virus and bringing it home to your family and maybe to your elderly parents, well, now it may be different. And so it's just getting an awareness of that. And keep in mind that fight or flight is not just about fear, right? It could be in the form of compassion fatigue, which somebody spoke about last week, Barbara Rubel, right? It could show up in that form. It could show up in just not being able to handle the daily types of things by complaining. There's not enough resources. There's not enough beds. There's not enough, and complaining, or even blaming. I've heard people blame the patients and the victims for not taking care and wasting their time because they're in again, or they have this, they're just not taking care. And all of those things could be symptoms of fight or flight. Because when we're in the challenge mode, we're in solution mode, where we're looking to solve problems and solutions, and we're able to access that part of our brain that's actually shut down when we go into fight or flight, that logical part of our brain. And it's the very thing that we need in that moment, right? So again, just create that heightened awareness so that you know, because that awareness will open up more choices for you and give you that split second to change your mind and respond in a different way. So when we can make the unconscious conscious, that means create awareness about the relationship of our thoughts, our feelings, and our behaviors. That's going to give us a lot more power. It's going to give us more choice, because we do choose how we show up every single day and every moment of every day based on our thoughts, our feelings, and our actions. So we want to create that self-awareness so that we can be more in touch with, well, what are the thoughts that are happening? You know, I talked about in my TEDx, we have 70,000 thoughts a day. I mean, that's insane. That's like a thought every second. But what's even more insane is that only 5% of those thoughts are new. So I want you to think about, if you're repeating the same thing over and over and over again, maybe they're unproductive. What's the impact that it's having on your health and wellness, those unproductive thoughts? And what's the impact it's having on your community or in your family, right? Because energy is contagious. So the energy of your thought, whether it's positive or negative, will impact, just like secondhand smoke, to everybody around you. I mean, we all know somebody who walks in the room and sucks the energy right out of the room. Do you know what I mean? Do you know someone like that? I hope you don't live with them, but you don't want to be that person. And after a while, under pressure, if you're not careful and you're tired, you're exhausted, in fact, it might be you. So you want to really, be aware and make this unconscious thought process more conscious so that you can make a choice. So I just want you to think about, what is it? Is there an unproductive thought that you have that you can bring into your conscious awareness now that's negatively impacting you or your family or the people that you're serving? You can write it in, or you can just write it down for yourself. Go ahead and think about that. And I want you to understand that self-sabotage lives in the unconscious. So that's where that excessive need for control is as well. When we make it more conscious, then we're able to address it. So, really be thinking about that for yourself. So thank you, Natalie, for sharing. So your thought is, I'm so tired. How many people, right, repeat to themselves, I'm so tired? What I hear a lot in my productivity work is, I don't have the time. I don't have the time. And we talk ourselves, and the more we tell ourselves that we're tired, then we are tired. And it's true that you're tired, but it could also be true. Have you ever had two feelings at the same time? Could you be tired and excited? Could you be, could you have two different things that you could look at the same time? And I'm going to share a story about different thoughts that I had at the same time and how that impacted me. And I'm going to get to that in just a second. But I do want you to share. Thank you guys so much for your shares here. So Maureen said, I very often think about how tired I am as well, right? So now we realize that actually there are things that we say to ourselves. And, maybe we feel frustrated when we're asked to work more, right? You're already working probably multiple hours overtime, and then you're needed to work more. And that is frustrating. So the question is, when you recognize that you're frustrated, what can we do with that? And we're going to talk about that. So thank you guys all for sharing. Oh, there's a couple more messages. Let me just see. Okay, so I do want to share these. So my thought is, I lost my future, my career, my passion, right? And I hear you. I mean, at the start of the pandemic, as a public speaker, my audience went away from 1 minute to the next, and everything was canceled for the whole year. Of course, it's come back in a different way because people are doing things online. But when we see things as losing them, right? We can't let go and move on when we feel like we've lost something. That's one of the challenges of the let go, is we're releasing. So you probably didn't lose what you're passionate about. You lost a particular job. You are going to move on to another position. So many people that I've heard in the pandemic and before the pandemic, that they lost their job, myself included, actually, And I was just going to go into this. In 2008 and I'm going to go into that because I want to. I'm looking at your other points, right? So, and I definitely want to address them. So these things are all, I'm a failure. I don't have the time. Thank you so much for recognizing them. And what I would love is, when we have time at the end, if I didn't address it or give you something to help you with those thoughts that are holding you back, and those of you who didn't share, then let me know so that we can continue to give you other strategies. But I'm pretty sure we're going to give you some strategies that you're going to be able to use for that. So we'll come back to it. How do I motivate or encourage others when there's no encouraging me? That's hard. That's hard. And sometimes we have to show up and be the example, change the energy around us. And the reward and the encouragement is seeing the shift in everyone else. And I know that that's hard. And at the same time, we're going to go through these principles, and I hope that you'll find the power behind that. As I said, we'll come back to those things. Thank you guys so much. So why is it hard? Because everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face, says the famous Mike Tyson. Right? And so that's what I was going to mention about my 2008, because 2020 has been a huge punch in the face for a lot of people. Thank you. I thought you guys would like this quote. 2020 has been a huge punch in the face, for someone who lost their job and was so passionate about it and everything. I'm sure that you feel like it's more than a punch in the face, a punch in the stomach and a kick to the ribs, right? While you're down. And I had one of those years. 2020 was challenging, but it wasn't as much of an emotional upheaval and the amount of uncertainty that I had in 2008. And I want to share that with you just briefly, and because the antidotes come through the strategies that we're going to talk about. So in 2008, I was invited by my husband of 10 years, and we were together for 16 years. I was invited for a divorce. And my kids were 1 and 3. Now, I was worried sick about what this was going to mean for them psychologically. And I'm also a very loyal person. So this was very difficult for me to wrap my arms around. Thanks, Amy. You're talking about an invitation, right? So that was something that I had to grapple with, and how I was going to deal with it myself. And also I was living in Zurich, Switzerland at the time. So I was living in a foreign country. I was going to raise my kids, pretty much by myself. And what was I going to do? Or should I move back to the US, right? There's a lot of uncertainty. And at the same time, we lost almost all of our savings because our financial advisor was invested with Bernie Madoff, which was a Ponzi scheme at the time. So financially, not good. And then to make matters worse, because things seem to come in threes, I was working for a large market research company, and I was running one of their divisions, and they decided that they were going to sell that division. And I was going to manage this transition and this sale, but they weren't taking over senior management, so I wouldn't have a job after this process. So this is a huge amount of uncertainty and emotional upheaval for me in 2008. Thanks, Michelle. Dang, girl, tough year, right? But that being said, is we still all had our lives, right? There are people who are struggling in the hospital and losing children, parents, and so, but we've all had tough times. We've all had these punches in the face. We've all had tragedy and disappointment and frustration. And the question is how do we show up in the face of that? And so I wanted to share the strategies. As I said, they're cross-contextual. It may not be what you're experiencing on the front line, but I promise you that these strategies are cross-contextual, because what they're going to help you do is to shift your focus and direct your energy, because at the end of the day, that is what's going to help you let go. That's what's going to help you bounce back quicker and be more resilient. And that's actually what I call focusology. And if you go and you look me up in LinkedIn, it says I'm a focusologist. And I searched really hard to find the right term to describe what it is that I do and what I'm about. And it's really this. It's about managing our energy and shifting our focus in the way that creates a positive result a positive, meaningful result. And I later I'll come to that, that definition, and you can take a shot of it or write it down. But so these are the 4 strategies that I have been practicing for years to help me to show up like I want to show up. Not like my emotions would like me to show up, but how I can be purposeful despite the circumstances that are going around me. So number 1 is purpose, is finding the higher purpose and the meaning. Number 2 is managing my self-talk. And I'll go into each one of these, and we'll be doing some exercises in each one of these. Keep my eye on the time. Number 3 is focus. And that's really about focusing on what we can control versus what we can't control. That goes back to that control point. And then self-care, self-explanatory, but for whatever reason, it's the first thing that goes by the wayside. Even though we know that we need to take care of ourselves, we don't. And so we have to put structures and systems in place to support us in all of these areas, or we won't do them. Because our brains are wired to do what's easy and to go with that emotional part and that emotional path. So if we want to do what's best for us, we have to put some systems in place and really practice these ways of thinking on a daily basis. It's kind of like an artist, a musician, or an athlete, is they have to practice every day. Even though resilient is inherent in who we are and physically, we still have to decide, we have to choose it every day, and we choose it in how we show up. So number 1, let's go and go through it. So it's purpose. So connecting to a higher purpose was something that was really valuable to me. And then I'm going to share with you another story with this picture here. But to me personally, I was distraught. I was blown away at how this could happen. I thought we were in love. I mean, things seemed to be great in our relationship. We had a lot going for us. And then this came out of the blue. So personally, I was having a difficult time, but I couldn't focus on myself at this time. I had 2 little kids at 1 and 3. So I had to show up at my best. I had to be there for them. And I'll tell you why, because I witnessed friends of ours who had a divorce, and it was a nasty divorce, and it brought out the worst in them. And they dragged their kids through this terrible emotional game that was played back and forth. And really they had to do a lot of therapy over the years, the kids, in order to get over what the parents selfishly did to their kids. So I knew that it was for a higher purpose to show up at my best for my kids. Even if I didn't want to be nice, I could put my own feelings aside and show up in the right way. I'm not saying to be friends, let's say, if that's not where we were, but at the same time to be respectful and to show them the way that a relationship should be run, and also how a relationship can positively also break up, but still have respect for one another. And then also with my team, I was losing my job, but my team depended on me. There were people who were going to be brought over to the competitor, and it was my responsibility to make sure that those that lost their jobs were taken care of, and those that were going to go over to the competitor were taken care of. I'm just going to ask you guys to mute yourselves. Is there some background noise? Awesome, thank you. So for me, that was really critical, was finding that higher purpose. And if you've ever heard of Viktor Frankl, he talked about during the Holocaust, he wrote a book called Man's Search for Meaning. And he also talked about what kept people alive were the people who focused on a higher purpose, that even though what was happening to them was atrocious, they still could find a higher purpose and meaning in life that kept them alive. And for this picture here, and this man, a friend of mine is a medical doctor, and this man came into his office, and his head was down and his shoulders were down, and he was clearly upset about something. And the doctor said, "What brings you in?" And he says, "Well, I'm depressed." He said, "My life really isn't doesn't have any value. He's like, I work long hours and very often I have to work late and I miss my kids' activities and things like that. And I miss having dinner with the family. And really, and all for what? I mean, I'm just a hand worker and what I do really doesn't matter. And I'm just not a role model for my kids. And I just don't feel like there's any meaning. And the doctor said, well, what is it that you do? And he said, I fix guardrails. And the doctor looked at him and he said, oh, you save lives. And the man kind of straightened up and a little bit of a smile came to his face. And he goes, yeah, I guess I do. And the doctor said, so you save lives so that people can go home safely to their children and their families. That's important. That matters. And I'm telling you this story because you too can get really caught up, I'm sure, in the day-to-day, right? In all the monotony of what happens. And sometimes we get disconnected and we forget what's really important. We forget the higher purpose that we're working towards. And so we have to remind ourselves on a daily basis. A lot of companies that I work with, I don't know about your organizations, but in the morning when they get together and they do their sort of morning huddle, they will connect themselves to case studies, remembering a client that they served at the highest level and what results that client got, to help to motivate people, to remind them that everyone and every role in the organization matters to create that end outcome. So what I want you to do in the chat here is I want you to remember, why do you do the work that you do? What's the higher purpose? And really connect to that. It might be a case study or something that you can remember. Remember that person that we made a difference for. Remember that hug that I got from that family after we helped their grandmother, whatever it is. Go ahead and pop it in the chat and share with us, why is your work important? Why do you matter in what you do? No matter what it is, even if you're at home and you're with your kids, there's a higher purpose to help people who have needs, to help first responders be emotionally healthier. That's huge, right? Serving the people who are dealing with some of these atrocities on a daily basis. That's huge. I want to do everything I can to prevent people from taking their own lives. That's also huge. It's helping people to understand why they matter, because we all matter. Just reading your notes here. To make that it might make someone see themselves through others' eyes and recognize their worth. Absolutely. And there's different ways to do that and show people, right? And even how we show up every day. Maybe it's just, there was this book that I read a long time ago called The Energy Bus. And this bus driver, he took it upon himself that everybody who walked on that bus was going to have a great attitude. And this bus became like, the cheerleading bus, and they grew together. And they were all committed to sharing with one another, connecting with one another and bringing a positive attitude and uplifting everybody's day. And even just that, right? There's a higher purpose in that. So I want you to be thinking about that. So thank you guys for all putting your things in there. And I just want you to connect to it, because some days are hard and it's hard to remember what it's all about. And I can tell you that one of the things that I did with my children, and to keep me in a mode where I could function and be focused on the things that were going to serve me, is every morning when I woke up, I wrote in a gratitude journal. Because I really believe that gratitude is the antidote to stress. And so you can't be focused on gratitude and be upset or be stressed. It shifts the entire energy. And I'm going to spend some time tonight talking about that. And I want to do an exercise right now with you guys to experience it in a different way. Right. Thank you. So somebody said you love the idea of a gratitude journal. Well, so it actually came about because somebody told me, you should write a journal about all the things that he did you wrong. And I thought, wow, that would be focusing on incredible amount of negativity. Remember, we talked about the 70,000 thoughts and 5% being new. That would just be me surrounding myself with negativity. How would I show up for my family? How would I show up for my coworkers that needed me? If I was in that negativity, I wasn't going to bring my best. I wasn't going to do what was best for them. And that wasn't what I wanted to do. I wasn't going to be that divorced couple that dragged their kids through that and brought out the worst in themselves. I was committed to be purposeful and bring out the best in myself despite the situation. In a way, somebody said earlier, how do you motivate yourself? I think that was my motivation, is to say that I was going to do that. It was just setting that goal and that decision that I was going to be purposeful, that actually provided that motivation for me. So maybe there still is motivation within you that you can do, even if you don't need it externally for somebody to build you up. So I'd like to do a little exercise right now. I can't see most of you, but I'm going to ask you to, this is based on a Tony Robbins exercise. I worked with Tony Robbins for a number of years in one of his companies. And I think that he has some really great teaching. So this comes from some of his work. And, you can use this. This is based on gratitude. And what I'd like you guys to do is if you have any kind of inner turmoil, a decision or conflict, you're feeling stuck, you need some insights or direction, or even just a shift from a negative state to a positive state. In about 3 minutes, I'm going to help you to gain perspective and insights into resolving that challenge. So if there is a challenge in your mind, go ahead and bring that up. And we might be asking for a couple of different challenges, and I'm sure you can dig one out. So I want you to stand up. So we're going to change your physiology here, and everybody stand up. There's a couple people I can see, so I'll see that you guys are doing it. And when you stand, I want you to close your eyes. I want you to close your eyes, and I want you to take a couple of deep, long breaths. And breathe in and out through your nose. That's right, a couple of deep, long breaths. Really grounding yourself. Feeling grounded. Feeling relaxed, relaxing into your body. And I want you to call into focus the trigger point or situation or challenge that you'd like to resolve. And next, I want you to place one or both of your hands on your heart. That's it. And go ahead and get present with the physical beating of your heart. And as you breathe, notice and appreciate the physical strength and consistency of your heart. The power of your heart. The unconscious beating of your heart. You don't have to work for it. Your heart just beats without even you thinking about it. The power of your heart. Now notice and connect and appreciate the wisdom and beauty of your heart. And I want you to thank it. Thank your heart for guiding you and whispering your wisdom throughout your life. And in a moment, I'm going to ask you to call upon 3 memories when you experience gratitude or appreciation. And these memories can be little or small. Whatever comes up for you is just great. It's exactly the way it's supposed to be. So go ahead now and step into your first memory. Think of a time. Take a deep breath in and experience it. Think of a time when you felt grateful, when you felt joyful, and really experience it again now as if it's happening right now. Allow it in. Experience that moment. Now I'd like you to call upon a second memory, another time when you felt grateful, appreciated, or appreciated someone else. And go ahead and step into that moment and really see what you saw and hear what you heard and really feel what you felt as you were feeling that gratitude, that appreciation, that joy, that love that comes along with it. And take another deep breath in and bring in that third memory. This one, make it really feel the deep, profound gratitude in that moment. That moment as it fills up your heart. Be in it and feel it and see it and hear it and know it in your body, in your soul, and in your heart. So staying in this beautiful state of gratitude, I want you to call into focus that situation or challenge that you wanted to resolve for yourself again. And I want you to ask yourself in this state while you're standing 4 questions. The first question is, and I'll give you a moment of pause in between each one. All I need to remember is. All I need to do is. All I need to believe is. All I need to let go of is. And listen for those answers. Your heart always knows exactly what to do. And when you're ready, go ahead and sit down, and we're going to write down the wisdom of your heart. Go ahead and take a few minutes. I'm going to set the timer and write down the wisdom of your heart. The 4 questions are up on the screen. All I need to remember is, all I need to do is, all I need to believe is, and all I need to let go of is. Thank you. All right. So another one of the strategies is to shift our focus and direct our energy as our self-talk. So we all know we can be our worst enemies, right? I'm sure I'm not the only one. And I in my TEDx, I share this story about Nelson Mandela. That's why I have his picture here. Is that very quickly, Tony Robbins was excited to meet him, and he said, "Mr. Mandela, how did you survive 27 years in prison?" And Nelson Mandela got pretty intense, and he said, "Tony, I didn't survive. I prepared." So I want you to understand and recognize the power of the words that we use and how they can empower us and build us up, or how they can also disempower us. And so he chose words that were going to be purposeful, right? And survival is more aggressive. It's a completely different energy. So I want you to recognize the energy of those words. And I had a similar situation in my divorce process and with my ex-husband. On one side, I could choose that he was a liar. And on the other side, I could choose that he was my mentor. Both are true. And maybe both were true for Nelson Mandela, that he could survive and prepare. So I had to choose which one was most productive. Both were true, and I had every right to tell whatever story I wanted to tell around that, but it's not productive. So if I want to create a certain result, I have to be the author of my story. I need to be conscious of the story that I'm telling and the words that I'm using and how that drives me every day, and how that impacts everyone else around me every day. So I chose to tell over and over the story that he was a great mentor to me, and it's true. And I do believe this, and I fell back on some of my principles, that everything happens for a reason. And we were meant to be together for that time. And it meant that something else was coming, something else better for me at that time in my life. Right? So that's the story I chose to tell over and over again. And that empowered me. And it made me show up in the way that I wanted to show up with my children and in our relationship as we interacted as parents. So you get to choose with your self-talk. And I wanted to give you a tool here to understand and manage that. So this tool is called RISE. In order to change any kind of behavior or shift a state of mind or anything, we need to first recognize it. That's the R. We need to recognize it. We need to interrupt it. And interrupting is the interesting part, because most of the time we recognize and we know that a behavior is not working, or this self-talk is not serving us. but we don't do anything about it. And we just let it continue to go on. Or we decide we're going to swap it out, which is the next one, but we don't interrupt it. So we actually don't get any traction on it. It doesn't get any kind of consistency and it doesn't stick because we didn't interrupt the old pattern. As I said, when we're going to let go of something, right, we need to shift from one state to another state in order to let go. So interrupting something is a mental hack that allows us to stop that pattern of thought so that we can make room for a new one. It's the ability to let it go. And then we have to exercise it, and we have to exercise it daily. So let's take a look at recognizing it, really owning it. So one of the things that we can do here to recognize, own it, and accept it, right? That's the first step. Is if we can't do that, then we can't move on to the next step. So I was listening to a podcast with Mark Brackett on it, and he talks about emotional intelligence, and he talks about labeling. And if we label an emotion, that's absolutely key, because if you can name it, you can tame it. I like the rhyme and rhythm of that. So what I'd like you to do here is to identify 2 words that you're feeling to describe how you feel. So let's name it, and then we can tame it. Let's go ahead and write those into the chat. What are 2 words that describe how you feel? It could be in general. It could be for a particular situation that you're going through, a disappointment, a challenge, maybe a different one than the one you chose for the last exercise. I'm sure you've got more than one. Okay, great. Thanks, Carrie. So tired and annoyed. Great. Who else? 2 words: emotional and grieving, afraid and sad, fatigued and discouraged, overwhelmed and concerned. Thank you, guys. And sometimes just labeling it and naming it and feeling heard and putting it out there already is the first step to accepting it. Because sometimes we make it wrong. Sometimes we make it wrong how we feel. Does anyone else do that? Let me know in the chat. Does anyone else make it wrong to feel these things because we're supposed to be happy? Yep. Thank you, guys. So just labeling it and allowing yourself to say that can be the first step in really helping you to accept it. No matter how you feel about it or what you believe, whether it's good or bad, it's how you're feeling. So honor it to know that that's how you're feeling. Now, the key thing is to decide whether you're going to stay in that place or whether you're going to move on from it, because we all are human and we're going to have different types of feelings that are going to come up. Some of them are going to be unproductive if we stay in them for a long period of time. Does that make sense? I'll assume that you're saying yes. So then how do we go about and interrupt it, right? So the first thing is to recognize it. Oh, and by the way, what I thought was an interesting practice, and maybe this is something for you guys to think about. Brene Brown, I love Brene Brown, and Amy and I were talking about Brene Brown when we first met. What she does that same exercise with her team first thing in the morning when they do their check-in, just to give everybody a voice and feel heard. And so, it also lets you know where people are, and it can help you be able to connect in empathy with one another, and then decide what you're going to do with that and move on from that. So the second step is to interrupt it. So an interruption could be asking a question and challenging it. So you accept it, but then you could say, well, how do I want to feel? So I felt like, my ex was a liar, and I don't want to stay in that feeling. It doesn't leave me with a good feeling of feeling disappointed and frustrated and angry, right? That's how that leaves me feeling when I think of that. So we have to understand that our words direct our focus, and our focus directs our energy. And so me leaning towards liar, for instance, is going to give me a different set of energy, or Nelson Mandela focusing on survival over preparation. So we have to acknowledge it and then say, okay, well, how do I want to feel? How could this be different? So there's a strategy called reframing, which can help us to change the energy of that initial feeling that we have. We're moving it through, right? It's almost a form of releasing it, is by accepting it and then reframing it so that we can move through it. And you may have heard of these strategies before, right? It's not like I made any of this up. These are just things that really work for me. As a matter of fact, people call me the reframing queen because I've made it such a part of my existence. And there are times when I slip away from it, and it's funny because I'll hear it back from my kids. They'll reframe something for me, and it will remind me that that I'm not practicing it enough. So it needs to be practiced daily. So words can change your experience. So what I'd like you to do is to go back, and those words that you have, what are some alternatives that you could use that are less intense, right? So somebody who's exhausted, right? What's something that's less intense that you could use? How could you say it differently? How could you tell your story differently? That you've been working really hard, right? Right. So think about ways. I want you to think about ways that you can reframe those words. And I'm going to go back up and see what we had there. So angry, for instance. What's another way to say angry? Could you say disappointed? You could say passionate. Absolutely. As a matter of fact, that's really funny that somebody said that, is that sometimes I have a family member who can get really angry, and it's true. It's because he's passionate, and his passion comes out like that, and it can be misunderstood, right? So that's a great one. Justice seeking, right? If you feel like something's not fair, right? So look for ways to reframe them, like Nelson Mandela, like I did. Compassionate. I see these words. So emotional and caring, right? And you can be tired because you're caring, right? And so you still need to do something about it if you're tired, right? You need to find ways to create more energy, find and search for the things that create you energy, the activities, and make sure that you're incorporating them. And that's why we do need structures and systems in place, but we also need to tell ourselves different stories. If we tell ourselves we're tired all the time, that's not going to work. If we say that we need a break, right? That's different. It's a different way to express it. So is that supportive for you guys to see how you can take those words and change them? Simple and very effective. Thank you. Okay, good. So another thing that, in the way that they can regulate emotion is also when you're dealing with other people. If you hear them, like, this is a simple example. When I was younger and I would go get a shot, they'd say, this is going to hurt. Then what? I'm like bracing myself for this pain that's coming. Or later in life, I noticed that they changed their wording and they'd say, this is going to pinch. Well, I'm expecting something totally different, so I'm going to experience it different, right? And it can regulate the emotions that I'm feeling. So I want you to be thinking of that also when you're using words with other people, right? It makes a big difference. So it's not just how it regulates emotion for you, it also regulates emotion for other people. So for instance, someone else might tell you, I'm really tired, right? And you hear that, and you hear probably a lot of negativity and a lot of the same, heaviness that you feel. So how do you take it upon yourself to say, hey, I'm going to help this person to reframe it. Hey, it sounds like you need a break. Because you're giving them a new word, right? They're probably more likely to say, yeah, I need a break versus, yeah, I'm tired. So you can help them to reframe their language as well. And when you do that, and everybody starts to change their language, it changes the entire energy of the group, right? And it can change a new patient or somebody you're working with comes in. it can impact the way that you work with them just by responding in that different way with the energy. Sorry, something in my throat that's making it itchy. Another way is by using questions. Questions can create an interrupt and can also direct focus. So I was on a flight to Disney with my kids, and we were in the back row, and just in front of us was a young boy. I guess he was about maybe about 10. I think he was a special needs young man, and he was traveling with his aunt, and he was screaming, "I don't want to fly. I'm so upset. I don't want to do this. I can't go. I got to get off the plane." And he was screaming. You'd see people looking around, and they were annoyed, and because he was freaking out. And I'm a very empathetic person, and so I really felt for him. And I happened to have some skills of reframing. So what I decided to do, even though it wasn't my business and maybe I shouldn't have butt in, because his aunt was doing a pretty good job in doing different things with him, but I figured she needed a break and she needed some help. So I jumped in and I said to him, "Hey, what are you looking forward to in Disney?" So by asking him a question that put him already there, it took his focus away in the present moment of taking off and the concern about the flight. So a question can do the same thing, right? It can distract somebody and it can distance them from the emotion that they're currently feeling. So think about how you can use questions both for yourself and for other people that you're working with. So whether it's a patient, a client, or whomever on the front line. Do you guys do this? Do you use questions to help people to reframe? Absolutely. Yes. Okay. So you guys, what am I saying? You guys got the skills, right? Change those patterns. So you know this. So maybe maybe you do it for others, but a lot of times, like the shoemakers, kids, is we don't necessarily do it for ourselves. So check in on yourself and see how well are you doing that for yourself or your family, the people who are emotionally close to you and emotionally trigger you. Try to be more purposeful about implementing it closer to home. Okay, then we're gonna swap it, right? We're gonna have that. Oh, hold on. We're gonna have that new word, that new behavior, that new thing that we're going to bring in. And since we're talking about words and we talked about gratitude and the power of gratitude, I wanted to do another quick exercise with you that's super powerful. And you can do this on your own while you're sitting. So here's what we're going to do. In 45 seconds, you're going to say out loud to yourself, and I want you to say it out loud because I want you to hear yourself saying it, and I want you to get the impact physically of how that happens when you say it out loud. And you're going to say all the activities that you do from the morning until the night, separated with "I have to." So as far as you get into the day, I have to get up in the morning. I have to have my morning coffee. I have to walk the dog. I have to go to the morning meeting, and so forth. So in between each sentence, you're going to say "have to." And even if you don't talk like this or whatever, this is the exercise. Just go ahead and do that. I'm going to put my timer on for 45 seconds, and then I'll tell you when to stop, and then we'll debrief on it. Okay? So go. Okay, stop. So what are some words? You can pop those into the chat. What are some, you're already there. Joseph's like, that was exhausting. What are some words that describe the experience? And how did you feel physically? Was your body tightened? Where did you feel it like in your face? Did you feel heavy in your chest or your head? What were some words that describe that? I feel annoyed. What else? Tired again. Yeah. Overwhelming, overwhelmed, stressed. I'm sorry, I keep bringing you into these places, right? But hopefully we're pulling you out too. Unpleasant, exhausted, fatigued. Reminds you of all the things that it's an obligation too, right? The have to. It's like it's heavy. It's being a victim. It's like, you know, outside of your control. You have to do it. So welcome to your lives. It's crazy. But this is how we live a lot of times when we're busy, when there's so much going on, is we get caught up in this have to mode. And we have to recognize, even though it might not be all the time, when I did this, I recognize that there's way more have to moments than there need to be. And I need to bring it into my conscious awareness. Again, talking about making the unconscious conscious. If you're living like, you know, and going about without thinking, you may slip into this state, this habit, and that's why you feel stressed and it's unpleasant and you feel tired and exhausted. So again, we have a choice every day as to how we show up. And it can be shifted with one word. It can be shifted by shifting our state of mind, but we have to do it consciously. Right. So thank you. So somebody said, so I never say that, I say I choose to. And I hear you, right? It wasn't the way I talked either, but I did show up that way sometimes if I was honest with myself. And so especially over time when there's pressure, especially when I'm tired, we have these low thresholds, right? I remember it from when my kids were young and they were babies and they'd wake up in the middle of the night and I was just didn't get enough sleep. And so my threshold was lower. So, you know, loud noise would make me upset or different things, right? So we become more sensitive. So what I want to do is I want to do this exercise again from a different perspective, from a different state of mind. And I just want you to see how energy is everything and how it makes a difference. So we're also going to take 45 seconds. You're going to do the same thing. And go from morning until as far as you get. And you're going to say, I'm grateful to get up in the morning. I'm grateful to have coffee. I'm grateful to go to the morning meeting and so on. And for those of you who are perfectionists, don't get hung up on the exact same thing. It really doesn't matter. It's to experience the energetic difference. So go. Okay, stop. What were some words that described that experience? Much better, honored, blessed, humbled, helpful, happiness. Wow. Right? Very different energy. And that's what I wanted you to feel. Did you also feel it in your body? Right? Better, game changer. Yes, it's a game changer. Right? You felt it when you felt it in your heart and you tapped into that gratitude. You felt it now when you just talked about how you express your day. It completely excited, thankful, right? It completely shifts your state of mind. And I don't know if any of you recognize, did you say different things? Did you recognize other things during the day that maybe you didn't recognize before? One of the things that came up for me, it's because then you said different things because some of the other things that were mundane, you just deleted them out because we delete, distort, and generalize things all the time. So why delete the good things and the things that matter to us, which is what happens when we're in a have to mode. We want to delete the things that aren't important and that are trivial, right? So, and it sounded different when it came out of your mouth. It was a different tone. You probably felt different in your body. You might have been smiling, especially when we do this in pairs, right? Then you notice the difference in someone else's physiology and how it's changed. So it's huge. And I noticed when I did this that I said because. So I'm grateful to walk the dog because she brings so much joy in my life. I'm grateful to get up in the morning because I'm alive. So it helps us to connect to the meaning in our lives. And if that's all you do is shift your mindset just a little bit so that you can connect to more meaning. As I said, Viktor Frankl said that it was creating more meaning and finding gratitude in the little moments. That if they can find that during the Holocaust in a concentration camp, we can certainly find it during the pandemic and any other time. So it's up to us. Somebody said earlier it was about choosing. And interesting enough, I love how different people come up with different words and things. In one of the group that I did this with, they talked about that they felt like they were in control. It puts you back into control. Coming back to that whole point about us being control freaks, right? Stop exhausting yourself about focusing and worrying and upsetting yourself over things that you can't control, and control what you can control. Focus on things that bring you more gratitude. So then we have to exercise it, right? We have to do it on a daily basis. That might mean that if you have breakfast with your family or you have dinner with your family, that you go around the table and you say what you're grateful for, that you do it before you go to bed, and you do it when you wake up in the morning. So like I keep this gratitude journal, and I've been keeping it for 15 years now. It's a game changer. And sometimes I have to mix it up, because sometimes I just get into the habit of doing it, but I'm not really connecting to it. One time, actually in the beginning of the pandemic, I realized that I was doing it, but it wasn't really connecting to it. So then instead, in the mornings, I would do, there's a 30-day gratitude with Deepak Chopra. So I did that. It was a 10-minute a day thing. It doesn't have to take a lot of time, but with a little music and choreographed like that, it made a huge difference for me to reconnect. And then I could start doing my journal again the way I had been doing it. So how are you going to exercise this? I'd love for you to take a moment and think about, how are you going to incorporate this into your life, into different transitions throughout the day? If something comes up, how can you put a sticky note on your refrigerator or on your computer or somewhere to remind you? Can you give out 5 compliments a day, and that will share gratitude with other people, and that'll be a reminder to you to be grateful. Can you write one nice note to someone in your life every day or once a week? How are you going to incorporate this in your life? So go ahead and pop that into the chat. Now you guys are thinking. Are you thinking? I don't see anyone. I don't hear anyone. There we go. Gratitude post-it note in the morning. Okay. Journal at night, involve the family. Awesome. And remember, it's not just about saying you're going to do it. Now do something that helps you to remember to do it. Send yourself an email, send yourself a text, put that sticky note up right now. Get everybody involved. So I didn't hear from a lot of people on this. So I hope that you're going to do something that's going to support you. And maybe you're thinking about it, right? Put in the Outlook calendar. Maybe have a different gratitude theme every day. Oh, I love it. So you've really been thinking. So that's good. You were taking this time to think. Mondays might be a journal. Tuesdays might be share with others. Wednesday, gratitude for those helping me. Awesome. Really great. Thank you for putting so much thought into that. That's awesome. Absolutely. And right, somebody put in here, try different things out and see what works for you. See what really helps you to connect and shifts your state. And it can be looking at a picture that reminds you of a happy time where you were really grateful, or looking at, sometimes I love to just look, I have some pictures of my kids around. I like to just take a moment to look at their pictures or to listen to a song that makes me feel grateful, right? So there's so many different ways. Oh, somebody just said music, right? I saw that on there. So look at different ways to exercise it. So let's move on to focus. So this was a really key thing for me as I was going through, was to stay focused on what I could control and to let go of the things that I couldn't control. I knew I was going to lose my job. That wasn't something I could control, but how I showed up every day to support that team was something I could control. And even though I didn't know where I would end up, I knew I'd figure it out. And I focused also on my principles of everything happens for a reason. And I believe that one door closes, another one opens. So I reminded myself of those principles that I believe in, so that it could drive me, right? So I want you to think about, what are some things that are outside of your control that you're worried about, you're concerned about. So go ahead and kind of maybe on a piece of paper, write down on the left-hand side those things that are outside of your control and those things that are inside of your control. Go ahead and take a moment to do that. Okay. So in the beginning of the pandemic, I saw this great picture, and it said, "You're only unproductive by the standards of the world we lived in 2 months ago, and that world is gone." And I think it's really important when we think about what we can control and what's outside of our control, that we realize that from time to time we need to step back and we need to reset expectations, because maybe we have all of this focus on the things that we can't control, or because we have some expectations that aren't realistic of ourselves, of others, and it might have changed based on the circumstances. So I want you to think about relating to the things that you can't control, looking at that list and the things that you're worried about. What are some expectations that you had of yourself or others? And how do you need to reset some of those expectations? Go ahead and give that some thought and write that down. I'd love for you to pop into the chat one expectation that you have of yourself or others that you're going to reset. So I'll give you an example in case. So for myself, one of the expectations is that I could keep the house clean. But with everybody here and eating all meals here, which they weren't here eating all those meals before, I don't know, but for some reason we have dishes and plates and glasses and everything all over the place, whether they're on the table or on the counter. There just seems to be a multitude of mess everywhere and clutter. So I can't expect to be on top of that anymore, or ever. So what I did to reset my expectations was I said, well, I can clean up my desk and make sure that that area is clean, which sometimes it's not. And I can also give myself permission to let go of some of those things if they're not done. But I do have this one wish, and I keep one counter clean so that I can look at that counter, and everything else can be chaotic around it, but I have that one clean counter. So you have to decide for yourself, and this is a very trivial type of example, but sometimes it's those trivial things and expectations, they create stress for us, disappointment. And so it's when our expectations aren't met, which is when it creates stress for us and upset. So let's see what you guys said. Let's go back. So somebody said, feels like just about everything in my life is out of control. The only thing I can control is my attitude towards it. Absolutely. So what are the things that you can do to change your attitude towards it, right? How could you see the possibilities? How could you, there must be things within your control. Some things, So it's how you show up, but what you eat is within your control, probably, right? So could you eat healthier? Or, sometimes what people do is, because everything's out of control, well, I'm just going to eat a lot of sweets and snacks, and I'm going to drink a lot of alcohol, and that's going to make me feel better. So it is within my control to get more sleep. It is within my control to eat healthy in a way that's going to energize me versus make me even more tired, right? So I want you guys to be thinking about that too, that those are things that are within your control that might not be things that you were thinking about. Right. So so you guys are getting it. Right? Trying to remember that I'm not just home and then I'm working a full-time job. Right. So sometimes I have to let go and change my expectations about my interaction with my kids, because even though I'm working at home, in some cases, my workload is higher in some cases now because of the pandemic. And so what does that mean? And how do I interact with them? Because they're done at 2 o'clock and they want to interact. And so I feel guilty because they're home. But like you said, you're home, but you're working, right? So put that into perspective for yourself and also for them, right? That's how you manage expectations, is you let them know, hey, I know everybody's home. I have to continue to work until 5 o'clock, and then, and then we'll do this together or whatever. This is interesting. Hold on a second. Totally agree. There is this thing called toxic positivity too, and there's a time and space for all feelings. Tell me more about that. I think that it's important to know that I'm not talking about positive thinking. I'm talking about purposeful thinking. I hope you understand the difference, because being positive just for the sake of being positive, actually, there was a good example. I think it was, I forget the general's name. They were in Vietnam and they were in the caves. And he said that people who were positive, those were the people who lost their motivation and will to live very quickly, because they were positive that they were going to be out by Christmas. And then they were positive and they talking positive and setting an expectation that they were going to be out by Easter. And it broke down their will. But those that were realistic and focused on being purposeful, those are the ones that kept up their mental spirit. Okay, so toxic positivity is being positive even though somebody passed away. I mean, yeah, that I don't even know that's toxic positivity. That's unrealistic, right? That's why I said we have to feel it. We have to allow ourselves to feel it. And depending on what it is, it needs a different space and time in order to accept it, like really feel it. And then how do we accept it and move through it? And depending on the situation will depend on how much time that is. And you'll know when it's time to move on. You'll know when when it's no longer serving you and starting to create problems for you. So yeah, if somebody told you that they demanded that you be positive and move on because everyone dies, what do you say to that person? You just, I don't think anybody can demand you to be positive. And so, maybe it's also understanding that they mean well. And a lot of times, this is my reframe. Sorry, I can't help it. I go into this reframe. They probably mean well and they don't know what to say. When my father died when I was 19, I had one of my best friends did not speak to me for 6 months. She didn't know what to say to me, so she said nothing. And so I think that people sometimes they say the wrong things in trying to be helpful. So if if it's at all possible, that's one of the things that you could do for yourself internally, is reframe it and have empathy for that person, that they just don't know what to say, and give them the benefit of the doubt, right? We can assume positive intent and then and realize that that's not applicable to you in the way that they said it. I hope that that is supportive in the way that I said it. I'm just looking through the notes here. Right. One of the things you're going to give up is I can't, that I don't have to get everything done in one day. It's okay to get a few things done and then move them to the next day. Absolutely. Let's see. So a huge one for me is tracking my daughter and her schoolwork and her attendance. It's a huge stress. She's a teenager. And I've been working on how to manage differently and maintain good relationship with her. I hear you. I have 2 teenagers as well. And sometimes we have to give them the responsibility and also the consequences if they don't follow through. So because it's with our teens, or also I see this in teams of teens and teams, that if you're going to be the person who makes sure she gets it done, then she feels like she doesn't have to remember. So you help her set a timer on her watch or her phone for her to do it, and come up with some strategies to have her do it on her own that may be supportive for you. And I understand. And one of the things that I learned a long time ago, and it helps for me also, is what removes sometimes the stress of the conversation between myself and the teens is texting them. It's just text them something that I need them to do versus have a conversation, because sometimes the conversation goes somewhere else and triggers me or triggers them, and then it doesn't go well. So maybe that's also supportive for you. I totally understand. Thank you. So somebody's sending some kudos out to everybody else and say, you parents are heroes for your children during this pandemic. And that is true. Thank you for saying that and sharing that, because I think some people need to hear that. It is true that it's not easy being a parent during this pandemic, just like it's not easy being a teacher or any other position. And we're working it out as we go along. And that's something we can give ourselves permission for as well, is to understand that we don't have all the answers. We don't know how this works, and we're going to figure it out as we go along. So what do you need to let go of, right? And we talked about changing expectations. What do you need to let go of? Do you need to let go of the need to be right? Do you need to let go of assumptions or being the victim, fixing other people's problems, caring what other people think, overanalyzing, taking things personally, needing to always be in control and having control? Do we need to get rid of anger, guilt, shame, sadness, fear, right? What do we need to let go? What would be the biggest relief for you to let go of along that lines of all those things that you can't control? Talked about expectations and reframing and changing expectations. Is there anything else that you missed that you feel like you need to let go of? Excuse me, go ahead and put that in the chat. Is there anything else? Overanalyzing, I hear you, right? Recognize these things. And when they show up, I need to let go of resentment, assumptions, fixing other people's problems, right? So recognize it, and then decide. It's an internal decision to say, I'm really going to work on this. I'm going to be purposeful, and I'm going to put some things in place to help me to do that. You know, a lot of these things, right? It's that pattern interrupt. It's asking yourself a question, using that same thing that you would do to somebody else. If it's perfectionism, the question could be, is this good enough? Right? If it's assumptions, it could be, what assumptions am I making here? So by asking yourself the question, you're challenging these things that you feel like you need to let go of. And so that you recognize them, and that will help you to interrupt the pattern and then swap it out with something else. All right, let's move on. I also want to give you a chance. So really, letting go is the ultimate control. So if we want to be control freaks, then we want to become really good at letting go. And again, that's going to be the key to resiliency. And it's also the key to time management and prioritization, right? So it's funny that my two worlds kind of collide over this, but it's a very similar thing. It's letting go. So the last thing is healthcare, self-care. And what's important to understand as to why this is so important, as I said, it's the thing that typically gets left out. But we actually, it's not a should, it's a must. We actually keep stress in ourselves. So we have to physically release stress. As we said early on in the beginning, that our thoughts impact our biology, and this stress waits and hangs in the cells. So by sleeping, it helps us to release. So one of the things that I absolutely did for myself during that time where all these three things happened at once is I made sure that I went to bed earlier than I normally do, that I would get more sleep and focus on more quality sleep. Number two is I made sure that I exercised, that I was in movement on a daily basis. I went to the steam room. I joined a kickboxing class, which was awesome because it was really helped me get some of my frustration and aggression out, because it can come out in my words or with other people, or it can come out in my movement, right? And in my exercise. And it's much healthier for it to come out in that way than it is to come out and impact the people around me. I also just took some deep breathing exercises. So throughout the day, I would just remind myself at certain points in the day to take some deep breaths. And when I was traveling from home and to work back and forth, I had a 30-minute drive. So one of the things that I did was I focused on singing really loudly, because there's something about when we're vocal, that it's also getting through our nervous system and it's coming out. So people scream and cry, and it's very cathartic because it's shifting in our nervous system. It's releasing the stress from those cells. So the breathing, and I would deep breathe while I was driving too. Sometimes my kids are like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm just breathing out and letting go of some of the stresses." We have to take those moments to release. And do something to make yourself laugh, and humor, right? Humor is huge. Get yourself into one of those belly laugh, milk coming out the nose kind of laugh that really can release a lot of stress. So, watch a comedy show, do the things that make you laugh. Think about a memory and a moment that makes you laugh. Just reading a note here. I read somewhere that the statement that it's unethical as helping professional not to practice self-care, that is absolutely true. It's unethical for you or anyone to not practice self-care, because you're supporting others and you need to be at your best. So that's what happened for me is I kind of said to myself that it's not okay not to do this. I need to do this for myself. And I knew that I wouldn't show up in the way that I wanted if I didn't take care of myself. So it's the same thing, right? If you have that job, right? If you're in that position and you're supporting others, you must be at that place to take care of yourself. It's the same. All of the frontline workers. I have a friend who works primarily with fire departments, right? And so it's not safe for their team if one of their team members is not, physically and mentally healthy, because it can put the other people in the team at risk, and it could put the people that you're serving at risk. So absolutely. So how you start your day is going to make a big difference. So it's not just what you do when you start your day, it's also what you don't do. So do things that are good practices. Don't snooze in and sleep in. Decide when you're going to wake up, and wake up at that time, because that's going to help you say, when I decide something, I'm going to follow through. That will ripple through other areas of your life. And I saw this in the beginning of the pandemic. I allowed myself to snooze and to sleep in because I felt tired, right? There was a lot of emotional stuff going on and I felt tired, and that's okay. But I need to decide the night before, because I could see that I was allowing myself to slip on other decisions that I was making and promises. And that's not okay. So for me, it's no snoozing in the morning. Decide when you're going to get up and get up at that time. No news in the morning. News is only negative energy. If you're a news person and you want to put that into your life, do it later in the day. Don't make it the first thing, because it's going to impact the energy that you start your day with. Don't start your day with sugary foods that are going to have you go up and then crash down. Eat something that's going to really power you for the day and nourish you. What else? What else do you need to stop doing in the morning that you know isn't serving you? Go ahead and pop that in the chat. If there's something that you know that you're doing in the morning that isn't serving you and creates some negativity, watching TV, don't do it. Do it later. Do it later in the day. Do yourself a favor and read something powerful. Listen to music. Do something that lifts you up versus sucks the energy out. Stay in my PJs. A lot of people say that it's better to get dressed when you go to work, right? Because it changes your mental state. So that's true. Social media, absolutely. Don't scroll through social media first thing in the morning. Again, do something that empowers you. I do not look at my phone until after I have breakfast and do my morning routine. Don't think about all the things that I need to do during the day. Yeah, absolutely. Wait till you start work and then you can take a look at that. And ideally, you can create the list of things that you need to do for tomorrow or the day before, and then you won't have to worry about the time that it takes to get into everything, because when you're ready to start your work and the things that you need to do, they'll be there. But give yourself some space in the morning when you wake up to nourish yourself in different ways. Start listening to music some more in the morning, right? We get away from these things that we know are good for us, and so we need to bring them back in. Think about the things that I'm dreading for the day. You definitely want to stop doing that, right? And shift your focus somewhere else. Avoid negative self-talk in the morning. I had a friend who I shared a room with when we went to self-development things, and she'd wake up in the morning and she would scream the F word. And I'd be like, what's going on? And that was the way that she woke up every day. And I thought, wow, that was disturbing to me. So that negative self-talk in the morning, how can you reframe that? How can you shift your focus? What are you focused on when you're, if you're thinking about all the things that you dread for the day? Well, what else could you think about? Where could you shift your focus? That's all this is about, is being able to shift your focus so that you can shift the energy of your thought. It's not complicated. It just requires practice and purpose and setting up structures and systems for yourself to make sure it happens, whether it's reminders. So for instance, if you want to make sure that you drink more water, then make sure that you have something around that's there that supports you to drink more water. It's in my presence, right? So then I'm going to drink more of it. What are the things that you need to support you in your environment to make you successful? So anyway, food for thought. And so the last thing that I want to talk about is I want to do a little, what are we doing on time? Okay, we're almost at the end. So I want to do a little exercise around understanding that we need to have transitions throughout the day. We need to move, and especially we need to have clearing breaks. We need to take out the trash. If you take out your physical trash every day, why wouldn't you take out your mental trash? At the end of every day, do yourself a favor and have a clearing process, a trash clearing process for yourself. And so what I'd like to do right now is a little bit of a process for you, and then we'll close out and we'll see if there's any questions. So go ahead and close your eyes. This time you can sit if you want to sit. And go ahead and take a few breaths in, deep breaths in. Holding at the top and breathing in and out through your nose. Just feel your feet grounded on the floor, your back against the chair, and allow yourself with each and every breath to relax yourself further. That's right. Now, while continuing to breathe comfortably but deeply, imagine yourself at the door of a quiet room. It's a beautiful room. It's decorated in your favorite style with your favorite colors. And there's an absolutely beautiful desk and a super comfy chair right there. And there's some white lined paper and a beautiful pen. One of those pens that you pick it up and it's heavy and it just flows as you write with it. So go ahead and sit down. Go ahead and pick up that pen and feel the weight of it. And go ahead and relax into that chair. And pick up the lined paper and put it in front of you and start writing about your day. And let all the cares, concerns, and stresses roll out. Roll out onto the paper. All the worries, let them release onto the paper through the pen. That's right. Just let it keep coming and keep writing. And the more you write, the more you release. And the more you release, the more you write. And you already feel freer and happier and calmer as you write and release. And when you're complete, when you've written everything that you can think about, that you were frustrated with, or you're concerned or worried about during the day, go ahead and step back and step away from the desk. And just notice now, just notice. Now all the spaces between the words become the lessons that reveal themselves. And go ahead and keep breathing deeply. Because the more you breathe, the more the lessons come forward now. That's right. Now imagine a large bucket of water. It's a glass bucket. It's on the other side of the room. And go ahead and take that paper and place the paper into the bucket. And watch the ink of those feelings fall off the paper. Wow, I didn't even know that was possible. Notice how easily and effortlessly the ink, just those feelings, they turn into tiny little particles and disappear in the water. And then before you know it, they're simply gone. The paper's still there, and the memory of the event is there. But all that you've learned has helped you now release the emotions that no longer serve you. You are free. And go ahead and take a few more deep breaths. And take in the beauty of this process. And be in awe of the fact that all of those feelings have left the paper, have been released, and how easily and effortless it was to release those feelings that no longer serve you. And keep those lessons in a special place in your heart for when you need them in the future, you can call upon them. Go ahead and take another deep breath in, knowing that you can follow this process, this easy and effortless process that you can release through your imagination every day. Go ahead and take another deep breath in and come back to now when you're ready. So welcome back. So how did that feel? That was good. And you can release in lots of different ways, right? That was just an imagining process that helped you relax and using some metaphors and help you to release at an unconscious level that you might or might not be aware of what was actually released. But we need to take more time for ourselves to get into that relaxed state and to give ourselves a moment to be grateful and shift our state, to recognize and accept the things that we're feeling and allow ourselves also to move through them and pass them by allowing us to release them, taking out the trash. So thank you guys. So find your process of releasing. It can be something physical. You can, at the end of the day, take a shower and use that as a metaphor for all of the the challenges, the worries, the concerns, the struggles, allow them to wash over and through and away and down the drain, right? There's just creating that imagery, or walk out the door and let out a huge breath, right? An over exaggerated breath as you think about a challenge or a problem, and you bring it in and you want to let it all out and blow it to the next community and neighborhood and county, right? And give it like that. There's lots of different ways to do that, but find something for yourself that really helps you to take out the trash every day, to clear and cleanse and start the next day fresh. And find times throughout the day. And journaling, even though we did it visually here, journaling 15 minutes a day, there's a lot of studies that show that this really does help us to process our challenges, to recognize them, and help us to better accept and move through them. So that could be a nice thing that you do at the end of the day or in the morning, as well as just to journal. So those are the 4 things that we talked about today, the strategies, the 4 strategies that'll help you shift your focus and direct your energy. It was purpose, finding a higher meaning, self-talk, and managing your self-talk to be more purposeful about the words that you choose, and how that drives and changes the interactions that you have with the circumstances around you. Focus on the things that you can control versus the things that you can't, and take care of yourself. Make sure that you are taking time to breathe, to move, to nurture yourself. And so I told you I would share with you my definition of focusology. So the way to be more resilient and is around focusology, is the art of controlling and directing the energy of your thoughts, feelings, and actions to produce a positive and meaningful outcome. So that's really something that I've created and working on to help people to understand these strategies. So, with that, I just wanted to share a last piece of a story, and then, ask you guys for what you're taking away. Is during that process when we were selling the division, I was working with a number of the different management team, and there was a group of people that were losing their jobs like myself, and there was a group of people that were going over to our competitor as they're the ones who have bought the division. And through all of this, I showed up every day with purpose and supported my team. I wanted them to feel loved, to feel supported, and to feel like they mattered. And at the end of the day, give them the best support that I was able to do, the highest level of transparency that I was able to do. And a year later, I met with one of the management team who had lost his job, like myself. And we were sharing and talking, and he was saying, how much of an inspiration that I was for him during that time. And I really was surprised, because I had no idea. And he said to me, every time I have a challenge, I think about, what would Penny do here? I was completely blown away. That's an amazing, nobody could say anything better to me, right? And so what it really taught me was that inner motivation that I had to show up at my best for the higher purpose for the team. They noticed. It made a difference. And so we have to be the example. And that was a beautiful testament to him, to me, to reaffirm that it was worth it. It wasn't easy, but I made a difference. So I'm just saying to you, where can you be the example at home, be the example at work, and let that motivate you to know that what you do matters, and that impact that you're going to shift in yourself and shift in others is going to be very important. And so the way to do that is to control and direct the energy of your thought to empower and influence and support others. So thank you guys so much for all of your work tonight. And I'd love to hear just in the chat what you're taking away from tonight. What was the biggest takeaway? And wish you all much love in this difficult time.
All right, we'll let people put some things in the chat for Penny, some of the takeaways that you've gotten from tonight's session. I just wanted to add a few things. We wanted to, first of all, thank everyone for attending tonight. I'm sure that you feel like I have felt tonight. This has been kind of exactly what I needed for myself, and I hope that you have felt the same way and enjoyed the message that Penny has brought to us. If you like this, please help us get the word out. We have a whole series of these. There's the rest of this week, and we're doing 2 weeks in January. And so maybe you know some coworkers, some friends, post it to your Facebook page, or get the word out with some people that you know that are struggling. These are free, and as you've experienced tonight, it's a great help. Invite others that you might know to join our sessions. They can sign up easily through the Crossroads Western Iowa Project Hope page. And also, as I was listening to this tonight, one of the things that I thought about is some of the staff that we work with and how beneficial this would be for them. And a lot of them aren't able to attend tonight because they're doing groups or other things like that. And so we did record this tonight, and it will be available to watch or rewatch on the Project Hope page there where you registered. So feel free to go to that, or maybe I was actually texting one of our supervisors. I know I was multitasking. Hey, you need to show this during one of the staffings. We need to do this as a staff training. So, and then lastly, I just want to thank Southwestern Iowa Region on Mental Health and Disability Services for providing the grant that has allowed this to bring this to you and provide this series to you. Tomorrow night is going to be our essential workers. And then Thursday will be the teens, and each of the series have been phenomenal. Penny will be speaking again at another one of our workshops here. So please feel free to join us. And we want to thank Penny especially for your thoughts and getting us to do some work tonight. And I know I'm feeling a lot more relaxed than when we started. So thank you very much, Penny, and thank you everyone for joining us.